Hi everybody, Chris Coleman here, certified hand therapist, and today we're going to talk about carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a nerve entrapment injury that happens at the level of the wrist where your median nerve goes through. The median nerve is a nerve that innervates your thumb, your index finger, your long finger, and then just the thumb side half of your ring finger. The other side of your ring finger and then your small finger are innervated by another nerve that runs this way called your ulnar nerve. That's the funny bone nerve that when you hit it, it's not so funny. So the median nerve comes through here in the wrist, and the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome are numbness and tingling in mostly these three fingers. They occur mostly at night because when we sleep we flex our wrist down and we make the tunnel smaller. This tunnel sits right here, and the bones of your wrist make a U-shaped fashion, much like this, and there's a ligament that sits on top. So that's where the tunnel is, as you can see. And then it's at its biggest or widest point when my wrist is straight. Now when I bend my wrist, it makes the tunnel smaller, and then when I extend my wrist, it makes the tunnel smaller as well. So nerves don't like to be compressed, they don't like to be squished. They really, to tell you the truth, don't like it when you look at them wrong, let alone push on them and crowd them. And they tell you that by going numb and tingly. So when we sleep at night and we're feeled up like this, that nerve gets some pressure on it, and it tells you by these fingers and half of this one going numb and tingly. Now that happens from time to time no matter what. We could be on the phone and our wrist is kind of bent, or we could be driving and those kinds of, and you get a little numbness and tingling. I don't think that 1 or 2 times that it happens in the course of a year is anything to worry about, but if you start to get it on a consistent basis, can become a problem. Nerves get worse and worse and worse as they get more and more injured. So a lot of times, if you don't treat them in a timely manner, they just get worse, and then sometimes they don't ever come back. To tell you the truth, in my practice for 20 years now, I have not seen a lot of carpal tunnel syndrome patients. And the problem is that people start to get the numbness and tingling, and they just kind of, all right, it's intermittent, and then it gets a little bit more, and it gets a little bit more, and starts to happen, and they don't get treatment for it or do some strategies to help keep it from progressing. So by the time they end up finally getting treatment, and that's usually when it becomes very painful as well as numb and tingly, they end up then having a nerve conduction study, which is kind of a traditional thing that they do. They want to see how well the nerve is working, and by the time that comes and they end up getting it, it's a severe compression, and they recommend then surgery. So I don't see many in my treatment, in my practice, prior to surgery, because they just don't get it taken care of in a timely manner. It ends up getting to the point where they need to have surgery. And there's sometimes when they get in there and they do the surgery, and a lot of times, 90% of the time, the pain is immediately relieved, but the numbness and tingling stays with you to some degree. And the longer you wait and the more beat up that nerve gets, the less likely it is that you're going to have a full recovery. So the take-home message here is that you really want to, if you start seeing these symptoms of numbness and tingling in these three fingers, if you're dropping things, you can't feel things, that's annoying, but then when the pain starts to set in, you start to get some really bad changes in that nerve that may never come back. So the take-home message is that if you're starting to see these things a little bit more consistently, then you're going to want to go get it taken care of or get it looked at. So a couple things you can do is certainly keep your wrist out of these positions that are prolonged, that put pressure on the nerve. Sitting like this, driving, as you're reading the paper, reading a book. Make sure your wrists are as straight as possible. Secondly, there's some splints out there that you can wear that will keep your wrist straight, especially when you sleep. Problem is there's a lot of bad ones out there that actually put your wrist in extension and end up what I think is hurting it. So, and there's some other anti-inflammatory things that you can certainly do in your at home to keep the inflammation out of there and keep the pressure off of the nerve, and try and make sure you don't get to the point where you would end up needing surgery, or you would end up, if you did have surgery, having a residual issue where you constantly have some numbness right here because those motor fibers and those sensory fibers didn't quite respond or get decompressed after treatment. So if you have any problems or questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me. My email address is jchriscoolman@ @gmail.com. It should be in the description below that you can certainly email me. I can give you my recommendations about what to do for splints and what you may want to do from an anti-inflammatory standpoint to help you out. Certainly you can also visit my website, helpforthehand.com. Also below if you'd like to click on that, and that's got some pictures and an article on carpal tunnel syndrome as well. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll talk to you soon.